It's great to have you here, Lisa. It's I've actually sort of seen your background, and you've worked at two iconic companies, and also in the board of Dropbox. I'm sure you're working through one of the greatest tech CEOs of our generation. So very excited to have you here. Before we go sort of officially kickstart the podcast, Lisa, I would love to hear what OneTrust does, and if you can explain as if you're explaining to a 5-year-old, I would love to just hear from you directly.
All right, that's a great challenge. Well, I'm so happy to be here today. So if I were to describe it as being let's see, I would take a superhero example, and I would say we're the superheroes. We're all about data and AI. So we're the superhero for your company to figure out how do you collect data, store data, protect the privacy, keep it compliant, and we're the superhero that allows you to activate that data so that you can use it for innovation.
And on that, very, very, very helpful. So then is that product being applicable across all departments, marketing, sales, IT, is that the play?
Yeah, the beauty of OneTrust is that we serve every industry in the world and every customer segment. So you can be a small company, you can be a big company, because everybody cares about data privacy, data governance, ethics, compliance, being able to leverage your data to train AI models. And so basically, a company cares about getting us in place is really part of their critical infrastructure.
Right. That's awesome. And in that case, would your core ideal sort of buyer for this platform, or how do you land this in a company? Is it typically the CIOs? Is that typically who you go after, or is it like chief privacy compliance officer? How does the land motion work in a complex setup?
Yeah, fantastic question. So unlike maybe some companies, like there's friends of mine that I talk to and they have like one key persona, it's the IT decision maker. We have a list of personas that we sell to. So it's the CIO, it's the chief data and analytics officer, it's the chief privacy officer. We sell to the CMO, right? Because we have consent and preferences and cookie management. We sell to CISOs, right? Chief Information Security Officer. So we sell to all of those critical personas because we serve what I call every trust domain. So if you're a risk professional, we have solutions for all the data risk professionals. And if you're somebody who wants to activate data, like a CMO or a chief data officer, we have data activation solutions for them.
That's very helpful because, interestingly, there was a recent ask from a customer. So obviously, as you know, we have an events platform. We do a bunch of stuff with AI and stuff like that. And there was an ask recently from a CMO. Do you integrate with OneTrust? I'm like, oh, wow. I've thought of OneTrust as a data privacy platform. I've never seen a marketing use case come up. So it's very fascinating to see how wide applicability the platform has across all departments and functions.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we started. So the company started off with data privacy and we have expanded. The company's 8 years old. So we have expanded into so many other places. So I'm not surprised that that's maybe the first way that you heard of us.
Right. That's awesome, Lisa. Curious to know, obviously you've transitioned from Autodesk and an iconic company to OneTrust. And both of them are at slightly different scale, even though they're massive in general, but Autodesk is at a very different scale compared to OneTrust, right? What are like the interesting marketing changes you observed, or how does your role change because you moved from a different scale company to a different scale company?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot. And I think it's a really good question, especially for people who are contemplating that. So, Autodesk, a 40-plus-year-old company, OneTrust, 8 years old. Autodesk is all about design and making a better world. So great, strong mission and purpose. And OneTrust, strong mission and purpose, because we're all about helping people, innovate and leverage data in a responsible way so that we're really respecting what I call the human right to have data rights. And one of the things also is you're in a different place in your journey. So usually in more well-established companies, especially like at Autodesk, they went after 3 major industries: architecture, engineering, construction, manufacturing, and media entertainment. So you're very focused. And after a while, just about everybody's got something of yours, so they're all a customer. So you get very focused on adoption, expansion, and renewal. Now, when you're a company like OneTrust, we're private, we're fast growing. I'm leaning much more heavily into acquisition and land motions, right? Because there's so many customers that can use our software. There's people who still haven't heard of us. So it's very much leaning in around awareness, consideration. How do I pull people in as opposed to just focusing on, how do I expand my footprint within a company? I mean, obviously we care about that too, but I'm leaning much more heavily into land and acquisition than ever before, as
That's
one
really
example.
That's a great example, actually. On that point, Lisa, I've been chatting with a few CMOs, and one thing that is interesting is the last couple of years, right? People are figuring out like what is working and what is not working because the software purchases have come down. There's a lot of pressure on ACVs and stuff. What is working for OneTrust? Obviously, you guys have a great product, but in terms of marketing channels, anything you're seeing is working consistently and emerging for you all from a channel standpoint? Yeah.
Yeah, and to even start off though with that, we're in a amazing market because no market is recession proof, but there's a lot of things that are like
Yeah.
regulatory changes and
Like,
regulatory requirements, generative AI, and the only
yeah.
way generative AI is valuable, right, is feed me data, be able to use data, and you want to make sure the data you're using you can use, it's compliant.
Right.
You're hoping you don't want bias in your data.
Right.
So we're in a market that's very hot right now. That's number one. But with respect to marketing channels, we are really very careful about our marketing mix.
Right.
So we leverage digital marketing heavy for think of top of funnel activities. So paid search, paid social, display, content syndication, all of those things, right? Because we really focus there. Then middle of funnel or bottom of funnel, the tofu, mofu, bofu, everybody uses those
Yeah.
acronyms. We really heavily also rely on events. And we'll do account-based marketing events, for example, for middle of funnel. So more personalized, events with specific accounts or customers that maybe is around a specific trust topic. It could be around consent and preference. It could be around compliance. It could be around data security, data privacy. It could just be around how does a CMO work well with a chief privacy officer, right? How does a CMO and a CDO work well together? So we'll use those kind of things. And then, of course, we use third-party trade shows because those are big events. You want to be at the Databricks events or the AWS events. You want to be at IAPP and the Gartner events. And so we do that as well, but you have to manage that mix because some of that is more expensive than
Right.
other channels.
Right.
And so we're very careful as we look across the marketing mix. And we find very much that digital has been working so well for us in that top of funnel activity. And we're also finding that trade shows help with top of funnel, and ABM has been fantastic for us in what I call sales progression. So something's in, it's a qualified opportunity, and now I want to progress it to closure.
That's awesome, Lisa. I sort of really like how you answered this question, free-facing how important tailwinds are for anything to work, right? And that's one big learning I've had in general, right? Like it's so easy for the marketing and sales teams to work on something when there is momentum for the company, and it's just a great place to be in. And I sort of like the fact you started this question with that statement that hey, we're in a great market. Let's try to sort of preface that. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's every topic is like you can't open up a publication, you can't read online. It's always all about these
Right.
topics. So it's so much fun to be in a market that everybody's talking about, everybody's trying to figure out solutions for, and it's a top priority to invest in. So we get to work with customers, be their partner in what we call their trust transformation journey. And that's just a great feeling because we have to have a great brand. They have to think super highly of us to and trust their brand reputation with us, right? Because they're using our products to make sure that they are respecting everybody else's data privacy rights.
I like this word that you used. It's trust transformation journey. Is that a term that you all coined, or is it like an industry-wide term, Lisa? Is that
Well, it's definitely something that we're using, the
awesome?
trust transformation journey. I have seen analysts and some others are
Use it.
picking up on that term. There's a lot of people that talk about trust. So there's lots of
Yeah.
surveys out there. But I think we talk about it in a unique way because we're always talking about there's risk professionals, so people who care about data risk. And then there are what I call the data activation professionals, right? And what we do is we figure out how to bring them unity, right? Because there's power in unity to make sure that we're future proofing their data for usage with AI. And I think that's the unique thing that we do is we bring those teams together. And I know as a CMO, sometimes as a CMO, you're going, oh no, here comes the people who are going to tell me I can't use this data. This is restricted, right? And then people are trying to activate and use data to innovate. always there's tension, and you need that tension in a company because you want to land in the right place where you're respecting the privacy rights, the data rights of your customers, while also giving them amazing innovations.
That's fantastic. The one sort of thing I think about often is, you know, these days everybody seems to at least start doing similar things, right? Like outbound, right? Paid campaigns, right? Field events, right? And a lot of sort of chat around how there is some reinvigoration of brand marketing and how brands have started to invest a lot more into brand, and the kinds of experiences you spoke about where it's very curated, where you invite a few folks and sort of have a very interesting topic to talk about. It's also an investment into brand, but obviously it helps in ABM, but also investment brand. Are there any interesting brand investments you're thinking about, or just like overall your philosophy of how companies should think about building a brand in a category to stand out compared to a sea of players in a category? Right.
Yeah, I love that you asked that question too. You might have mentioned this when we started. I sit on the Dropbox board,
Right.
and one of the topics we talk about on the board is trust. Like, there's an actual topic about trust. So I would say every company in the world should be striving for, if they're not already, to be a trusted brand. And why? Because employees want to work for a trusted brand. I want to partner. If I'm a partner, I want to partner with a trusted brand. And if I'm a customer, I want to buy from a trusted brand, because who I work for, who I buy from, and who I partner with is a reflection on my brand. And so I do think companies should be investing in that, and they should be elevating their brand whenever they can. And so I think people should be having their trust centers. You should have preference centers. For example, how do you want to be communicated to? How do you want me to be able to use your data? Consumers are smart. They know what their rights are. And we try to elevate our brand by having the best experience there. Like, we should demonstrate what great looks like, and with the experience that they have with us. So what's your support experience? What's your sales experience? What's your marketing experience? How easy are we to do business with? What's your experience with our partners? Because your partners are a reflection on your brand as well. And I think you really have to think holistically about that, because people do care. Are you a trusted brand?
That's awesome. Now you've said about Dropbox. What is, like, since you've worked with multiple CEOs, right, at OneTrust, Autodesk, and Dropbox, what do you think makes a successful CEO and CMO relationship, right? And in general, would love to hear your viewpoints on what great CEOs look like for a marketing counterpart.
It's a great question. In fact, it's so funny you should ask me that. I was just in a conversation with a colleague the other day who is looking at maybe doing an article about CEO and CMO relationships. And the reason being is there is data out there that the tenure of a CMO sometimes can be 2 years or less. I have fortunately always had longer term roles as a CMO, and that's been a great experience. But I think it all starts with the CEO and how they value and see marketing. Do you see marketing as a very strategic function? A function that's going to help you figure out what is your go-to-market strategy? What is your positioning and messaging? What do you stand for? What's your purpose? Do you see it as someone that's helping you figure out what new customer segments and business problems do you want to go after? Some CEOs, depending on where they are in their life cycle as a company, might be very much focused on performance marketing, right? I care about leads. I care about opportunities. I care about closed won rates. I always find that the CEOs that have the broadest view of marketing, strategy, performance marketing, those executional pieces, are the ones that I have always the best relationships with. I have the most fun with. I learn the most from, and I think my teams thrive in that environment. And you constantly are learning. So in my opinion, that's when you have a great CEO CMO relationship.
That's great. I think like just viewing the CMO as a strategic counterpart in your entire go-to-market journey rather than very short-term quarterly sort of goals in mind and push it. That's fantastic. Awesome. Lisa, one question I was thinking about was, I'm sure you all do a lot of content in general, right? Different types of content to get in front of audience. Do you see any interesting trends in video that you are seeing? Is video becoming the next big thing? What does sort of your team's focus look like? Just want to hear your high-level perspective on your video strategy and is video important going forward?
Yeah. Video is one of the most engaging content channels that we're using right now. And, it all kind of started with the pandemic. We all became used to seeing each other in 3D. people get bored now with 2D. I don't want to just see words on a screen or words on a piece of paper. I want to see people. I want to see the emotions on their face. I want to see their body language. So we're finding that that's how people consume information. Look at TikTok. Look at all these social platforms. It's so much leaning into video. And so what we're finding is we use it externally and internally. So externally, customer vignettes, capturing moments with customers, capturing moments with our employees while they're out at a trade show. You catch these learning moments, these relationship moments. And internally, we love to educate people. I'll snap on, my camera and I'll do like a quick little video, and then I send it to people on whatever, platform we're using in the company and share with them. Oh, I was just visiting this customer and here's what I learned. And it's just so much more engaging because I can hear tone, right? I can see facial expressions. I can hear excitement. And that is one of the things that I really think is so powerful about video. And the consumption is just going to continue to be more and more and more.
That's is your content team also prioritizing video in their activities that they're going after? Yeah, not just written content.
Yeah, so we have this fabulous content marketing team. We also have people on our team that specialize in video and video production. And that's what we're trying to do. We're producing video. We obviously lean into podcasts and blogs as well, because you want to serve all the different kind of content delivery methods that people prefer. But what we are finding is you get the most engagement and the most positive feedback typically when people can hear voice, and hopefully when they can see expressions.
That's great. That's great actually, because the one interesting thing that a lot of folks are focusing on is how do you get multimodal content, right? Like text plus video, text plus audio, because it feels like different people have different ways of consuming content. And I think that point that you made is fairly accurate from what I've been hearing from a lot of folks as well. That's great. Awesome. So one important topic is AI, right? And in general, there has been a lot of hype about AI, but the applications of AI are just emerging, right? And would love to hear your thoughts on if there are any interesting applications that your team is trying out that has seen some results already, or what have you seen in the market? Just high level viewpoints and just applications of AI in marketing would be very helpful.
Yeah, you make me even also think of marketing technology in general. So one of the things that I think is very unique for marketing, last count, and it probably is higher, I heard there was 8,500 plus marketing applications and solutions. Just think of that for MarTech.
Right.
Imagine being able to navigate that environment of all this technology out there that you can use to become more efficient and more effective. So marketing operations and technology teams have a special place in my heart, because that is a very hard thing to do. And so when it comes to AI, marketing is a perfect place to be experimenting and kind of be the tip of the spear. So common areas we look at, content generation. But I also see it as someone to assist your marketers. So it can be a part of ideation sessions, coming up with campaign ideas, because the data you feed into the AI or the machine learning can help you with that. We're leveraging it to help us with lead qualification and lead prioritization and ranking, so that our sellers are spending their time on the highest priority leads that have what I would say the highest propensity for closing business, so that we're really using their time well, and we're using that intelligence. Also for automated reporting. I think the list goes on how you can be using and leveraging AI within marketing. And for me, it's a matter of saying, what are our business priorities mapped to our marketing priorities? And then I take a look at this technology and we say, what are the technologies that we need to be using right now to help run our business? As well as, I like innovation. So I always like to say to my team, what are the areas we want to innovate with, leverage new technology and test and learn, because that's the fun part of the job. And I think that's where you can really be leveraging AI. And I expect marketing typically is one of those areas where you're seeing lots of more offerings coming out, right, to help us do our jobs better.
That's great. The interesting point you mentioned is, you look at technology from a standpoint, hey, what are the business priorities? And do we have the right technology to actually help us achieve that, right? And at least some of our customers we work with, they want to use that tech, but it's a new category sometimes, the new budget items, and they've not really budgeted those items in the last year. So they are trying to constantly fight with the CFOs to get that line item added. How do you sort of think about that when your team comes up with a tech that is not in your line item and they want to use it to increase their productivity?
Yeah, that's a great, and by the way, that's another key relationship that has evolved over the years is the CMO and the CFO relationship. Very, very critical because every CMO I've ever talked to has always said, I need more budget, I need more budget, I need more budget. And a CFO is like, tell me how you're efficiently spending the budget you have today. What's the return on investment? Why can't you do more with what you currently have? Right. And so what I like to do is when I'm looking at my marketing mix, I also look at the things that I call non-program spend. And my software and technology investments is my non-program spend. And I do allocate a percent of my budget for that because you have to have the foundational systems and processes and capabilities so marketers can do their jobs. And so I do carve out at the highest level. And then what we do is we prioritize within that bucket to say, what is money maybe that we know is already allocated because we're in contract or we're going to be using this for multiple years. And then we say, what is the new capability or technology that we need? And quite frankly, a lot of times that investment in that software, I can have some efficiency where I can say, if I do this, I can spend less money over here, right? Maybe I don't need to spend as much money with an agency, or I don't need to spend as much money with someplace else because I'm using this technology to make me more efficient. CFOs love that conversation. And I think that helps you with your planning and being more strategic with the dollars you have.
That's a great point. There is two important points you mentioned. One, hey, this new capabilities might actually decrease the spend on agencies. And I want to talk about that because I heard from another CMO that they are actually questioning how their agency relationships are going forward look like because of, for example, content creation through AI, right? Video editing through AI. All of them are a lot more democratized right now compared to working with a slightly more expensive agency. Do you see that tension going forward, Lisa, where agencies might have to adapt a little bit in terms of how they charge by hour because the model is changing with a lot of these different tools coming over?
Yeah, I think we're in a world now where we need maximum flexibility. And, I understand agencies need to be in business and be profitable as well, but I think we also need flexibility on projects. And a lot of times, you get that first proposal and it's really big. It covers so much and it's very, very, high priced. And I think we have to be able to work with agencies to say, can we phase this out? Can we have smaller chunks of work? Maybe we'll take this part on, you take that part on. And so you have to have that flexibility. And if you don't have that flexibility, I typically find that I can't work with that agency because if it's too much, like this is the only way that we do business, it's just very hard for us to make that work in our environment. So I do think agencies have to be more flexible over time, and they need to be able to shift and flex their model to get their foot in the door with a new company. Sometimes if you get just that one project, even as a small project, and you do amazing work, now you have a customer for life because I'm going to keep going back to that group because I was like, you did amazing work for me. It was cost effective. I'm going to keep doing work with you.
That's awesome, Lisa. We're in the last section right now in terms of just your reflections as you've worked as a CMO in the last couple of years, last multiple decades actually, right? I'm sure you've got a lot of learnings as you've gotten more experienced, right? If somebody has to ask you, what does it take to become a great CMO, right? What would you say are like the three important things that they should just be aware of and start executing if they have to be considered as one of the great CMOs in the B2B market?
Yeah, I love that question. So the first thing I would say before I get to just the three things for CMO, and this isn't just for CMOs, but it's for any leader, is you need to be a great leader first if you want to be a great CMO. And I think the number one priority for anybody to be a great leader is you have to be able to attract, hire, retain, coach, and nurture your team. Your team is everything, and your team is a reflection of you. That's how you're going to get work done. So I think that's the number one priority for a leader. Now, specifically for a CMO, I do think there's three things that a CMO has to be great at. Number one, you have to know your customer, you have to know your market, you have to know your products, and you have to know your competitive landscape. You can't just be at a superficial level with those. You got to be out talking to them. You have to understand. By the way, when I joined OneTrust, I studied for over 80 hours to get 2 of my privacy certifications because I needed to understand the market and understand the customers. So that's number one. Number two is I think every CMO has to be comfortable with data. I tell my team, you got to roll around in the data. You got to be comfortable with data because you want to be able to do analytics and you want to be able to make great business decisions from that data. And the last thing, this is more softer skills, is I tell CMOs that you have to, it's kind of both are true. You need to be agile and you need to be resilient, because marketing is usually the tip of the spear. If somebody says, let's go after a new market, a new geography, a new customer segment, what's the first thing that happens? Marketing. Put some messaging together, some positioning together. What can you get out there? Throw an event, throw a webinar, right? You're always the tip of the spear. So you have to be nimble and agile. And that means you also have to be resilient, because the only constant is change. So I always tell my team, if somebody asks me, oh, when is all this change going to stop? I'm like, you're asking me the wrong question. The question is how do I learn to adapt to and be okay with change? And how do I really become much more resilient? And I think CMOs have to have agility and resilience themselves, and then help their teams with those skills.
That's great, Lisa. I'm sure that, over the last couple of years, some things would have kept you up at night, right? Like, what you would have tried so much, but still there is a couple of things that are like constantly bugging you. What would those things look like, for a CMO like you who have had,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So things to keep me up at night. Number one is it's such a competitive field out there with talent. I do think about constantly about my team, coaching them, making sure that they're happy and retaining great talent. The other thing is our competitors. And, when you're in technology, your competitive landscape, sometimes it feels like it's changing weekly. So, and you have to stay on top of that, because that impacts your strategy. So you have to be able to pivot based on what's happening. So that's another one. But to kind of flip your question, I'll say the one thing that gets me out of bed in the morning and gets me excited for the day is when I'm at OneTrust, I am so excited about the fact that I'm at a company where we're building this whole new category of software all about trust, how we're helping people with data and AI. And you don't always get that in your career, where you get to build something new, really trailblaze. So that's the thing that gets me out of bed versus keeping me up at night.
That's great. Awesome, Lisa. And finally, one last question. You mentioned 3 great points about what it means to become a great CMO. For someone who's slightly in the middle management level, right? And if they want to get to that place at some point of time, let's say 5 to 10 years down the line, right? If there are things that they should just keep in mind, right, in terms of how they should just be a better marketer or just create better visibility for themselves, how should they think about, especially for women who are in the middle management layer in the career right now?
Yeah, well, if I focus on women here for a moment, here's what I would say. Number one is, think about the experiences, and I guess this is for everybody, but think about the experiences that you need to get in order to get to the CMO role, and then try to be purposeful about getting those experiences. Position yourselves ask for that experience, apply for that experience, whether it's in the company that you're in or maybe another company. I think for women in particular, though, I would say be confident in yourself and be willing to take risks. Sometimes I think women can be harder on themselves than anybody else, because they'll think, well, am I ready? Do I have enough experience? So be confident. The other thing I always give as advice is everybody should have mentors and advocates, and they play different roles in your career. A mentor is somebody who you absolutely trust and admire, who is going to tell you things that you probably don't want to hear, but you trust them enough that they're going to tell you the things that you need to hear, change, or do to be better. An advocate is somebody who I think is kind of on the sidelines, who's cheering you on and is putting your name forward for opportunities. Have you considered this person for this job or for that job? And you need to have both. And then I would say, when I think about the last piece, it's more, give yourself also the grace to, there are failures, there's wins and there's failures. And you know what? I have learned from both. And take that as a learning experience and give yourself some grace on that, because not everything you do is going to knock it out of the park, but you'll learn from it. So if something doesn't work, just take it as a learning experience.
That's great. There's one point that you mentioned that was important. You said, know what experiences would help you get to that role and then plan for it, right? Anything that they should just plan for, Lisa? Do you think there is a particular set of responsibilities that they should just learn? Is it demand gen or is it product? How do you think about it?
Well, I'll share even in my journey. So I spent most of my experience has been, B2B enterprise selling. And so I raised my hand when I was at my previous company and I said, I want to learn the self-serve e-commerce side of the business. Will you put me in that role? I had been at the company long enough. They gave me that opportunity. And now I learned the whole self-serve side of the business. And I hadn't had that experience before. And I got that into my portfolio. The other one I would say is, say somebody's working on campaigns and they have a lot of good campaign experience. Well, maybe they want to say, well, let me learn the positioning and messaging side of the house. Maybe I should go into product marketing and do 2 or 3 years there. The other experience I think you can be purposeful on is different geographies. It's really hard if you're sitting in an office in the US to say, oh, I completely understand the culture and how to market in Japan or in Germany or in France or in South America, right? Have an experience there, whether you do a year or 2 years, and then it really helps you understand the diversity that's out there, and that you can't use what I call the cookie cutter, one size fits all marketing. Like a lot of people, when they go to a new job, they think, oh, I'm going to bring my playbook from this job and I'm just going to make it work here. It doesn't happen that way because everything is very unique for the new company. And so you have to really learn that environment and then figure out how do you tailor your pattern recognition and your experience to fit what's specific about your new company and their new challenges.
That's awesome, Lisa. Lisa, this has been very, very helpful and fascinating, honestly, because to your point, at least I think very highly of Autodesk, and you've spent considerable amount of time there, which means that you've done something really good, cool there. And also the fact that you're leading marketing at OneTrust, which is a very, very fast growing company that I know of, is fascinating. So really appreciate your time today. It's been a very, very insightful conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here.